My personal review on Manson's album Heaven Upside Down is that, you know, I'm an agnostic personally when it comes to the afterlife, and an agnostic in the classical sense, which is an epistemological position concerning what can or cannot be known. So, what can and cannot be known, gnosis would apply to what can be known. So, your the prognosis is, your diagnosis is, and the Gnostics were a sect of Christians who were saying, we can know for certain that God is real. We can know for certain that Jesus is his son. We can know for certain that the afterlife exists. And these are all topics that are about that entail the afterlife, spirituality, and that address things that we just can't know about with any certainty. So it's possible to be an agnostic Christian. It's actually possible to be an agnostic theologian. If you were to say something like, well, my beliefs are my beliefs, but I'm aware they're not knowledge because I can't prove them to be true using my five senses. I can't prove them to be factual. So you can then be a religious person who has who has those beliefs but does not have the knowledge, doesn't have it as knowledge. So that's a epistemological stance. We go, well, yeah, faith-based belief articles aren't knowledge. Likewise, atheist agnostics are people who say the same thing. They recognize that the articles of belief, because they're based on faith. Faith is, in the Bible, the certainty of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen. So in other words, that which is blind to the eyes, the first recourse to the five senses, as well as emotionally wanted. So faith is, if there's any more contrived means to try to get knowledge and wisdom than faith, that's more greedy, that's less humble, tell me, because I'd like to know. There is, an existential sense in which, once again, like a mystic, an existential sense where I admire faith. But for those who I have faith in that way understand that those trusts are established, and so they know from their end, and they know from me that I have faith in them. So, but that's different to making claims about worldviews and claims about the state of the world that you want everyone else to just take on faith, or to say that it's a virtue to believe without proof, to believe anything without proof. So, much less the claim that to believe anything without proof is a virtue. So, the clip means, the album means a lot to me. It talks about church survival. It addresses church survival. It addresses citizens impersonating police. It talks about it talks about, well, I file the the afterlife in the category of that which we can't know. So I'm not telling you that there is or isn't one. And if I lack belief in one, what I just don't believe is that there's a man morally judging and evaluating us every move we make, and we have to be motivated by fear of punishment or hope for reward after death. yeah, and so the album also goes into bad luck in romance, um, to the extent that romance can be is like a threats of romance. If you're accustomed to be of service, then you're going to prefer to take time just walking and talking to prospective partners. The controversial topic in Tattooed in Reverse, addressing corruptions in psychiatry, I have a lot to say about. One human rights statute says that a person may not be subjected to scientific experimental treatment or therapy without his or her consent. And now, the fact that it says his or her, his divided by her consent, means in the event of bisexuality, androgyny, and so forth, what that same law is applying will therefore go and seize and pursue any bisexual you can find whose defenses seem low, and force psychiatry on them, because the his-her divide doesn't apply to the heart of the bisexual. It's to divide it. So to invoke that right and say you're free to be defended against psychiatry. It's more like that rule was put up there by people who want more bisexuals to experiment on, like the way that through a deception, like the way that Adolf Hitler would claim in Mein Kampf he was avenging the Jesus by killing off all the Jews when Jesus was a Jew. It makes no sense. So yeah, I'm not particularly happy about that. Plus what the conversations that go on, you say my human rights include, and they go, but you're under the Mental Health Act. Okay, well, way to invite a debate on yourself. Since the Human Rights Act says we have right to health, and you're saying I'm under the Mental Health Act, then either the type of health that you're supplying is inhumane by your own admission, or I'm not under the Mental Health Act at all. I'm under the Human Rights Act first and foremost, and you're admitting by putting me from the one to the other that what you're doing in terms of my health is designed to harm me. Otherwise you would not be excluding my human rights for sake of invoking the Mental Health Act to try and stammer me and deter me from argument or self-defense. So the way that healthcare is, the police state mentality, and my Baptist has proved it throughout his career, is corrupted by Christianity and is all kinds of wrong. Now, to have healthcare people think they can go and move in and impersonate the police themselves, when the police are already that corrupt and they're most likely religious unifiers, is all the more corrupt and disgusting. I arguably didn't make a citizen's arrest when I first got my job for Capital Chemist. I just helped security and a staff member and a cop spot, locate, and detain. But all without me contacting or touching the offender. I didn't touch the offender, and I didn't touch the stock that the offender stole. I left that to security and police. So, no, I believe it's out of line and out of order for anyone to, without disclosing they're a policeman. I think about saying things about my Baptist like Marilyn is Marilyn is kind to a fault. But I don't know a lot about the difficulties he encounters in terms of strange PC lobbyists making all sorts of misinterpretations and flawed contextualization of his artwork. So I could say he's fine to a cult instead of kind to a fault. Though the latter is true. The former is true. The latter, I think I have no problem with him. I love the guy. But he gets fined as though he were the leader of a cult. And, maybe he has a cult following, like a cult movie, because he's profound at acting when he wants to be, as is Gaga, as was Bowie, as has Jonathan Davis of Corn been, Queen of the Damned. So, yeah, fine to a cult is like a misnomer, because it's like going, yo, you're getting fined to a cult? You haven't started a religious cult, and you were even correcting devil worshippers from saying that the Church of Satan was about devil worship at a time in the 90s when LaVey and Zena LaVey were re-examining and had decided to deject from being claimants that the devil even exists, and only invoke Satan as an archetype for an opposing point of view, or an adversarial point of view, or the outcast, or the underdog, or the questioner. One thing religious unifiers are against is the Socratic questioner. And the reason for that is because at front, any group that claims they're a religious unifier is a denomination in disguise as a unity bringer. So they're going to be riddled with more contradictions than you can stoke a pick at. And the reason for that is because if they had unified all of Christianity, then all Christianity would be called the Uniting Church. So all it takes is one other denomination to exist that hasn't become part of the Uniting Church. They can't, nor can they say they're denomination less, because they're not. They would have to then be the same denomination as every other denomination, otherwise, or not be Christian at all. So long as they claim they're Christian and say things like denomination-less or uniting, they're lying right to your face. That's an easy and obvious lie right there. So, the times aren't getting it. Death is in fashion. There's a lot of fight for your rights going on, and my Baptist Maryland is fine to a cult. Yeah, and I love him. So fuck you. And furthermore, I will not let him be fined to a cult. No, 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 no. This is a tricky area where our language isn't expansive enough. Christopher Hitchens would mention it in debates. We don't have enough words for things going around. Manson's been great to improvisively design certain new words, but we need new words and we need more titles. Bowie, again, also humble to a fault. reinvents himself throughout albums and with different names that he's starring as. And and what I think is when in songs like Quicksand he writes, not a prophet or a Stone Age man, just a mortal with potential of a Superman. I think he's underrating himself. I also think it's the Nietzschean Superman that he's referring to back then. It doesn't get shown until I guess he felt comfortable enough to put the books of his liking in on a shelf as they appear in the cover of the album Heathen. But existentialism and Bowie go back very far. I mean, the name of the book by Nietzsche, The Gay Science, hasn't changed. It was just from a time when gay meant happy. So this book is Nietzsche's existential address of the topic of the science of of being happy in life. So, you know, a 1960s display of that, given Master Bowie's key and unforgettable role in the establishment of the bisexual rights movement. You know, though it permeates his lyrics, existential themes, it's certainly not, it's therefore certainly not fair to say that he became an existentialist in 2002 when the Heathen album was made, which shows his bookshelf with The Gay Science, Freud's interpretation of dreams, and Einstein's relativity. After all, he was saying even further back in the 70s, I'm like a librarian with a sex drive, so don't be thinking he wasn't reading just because he showed you some of his books in 2002. But I would encourage people to do the Amazon.com, save up about $1,000 and just order books to your appeal from Amazon.com. It was one of the best moves I ever made in life. And paperback books, I admit, they're somewhat more enjoyable. What's going on that's hypocrisy so far as they're trying to say sick from video. If they mean anything that's a video recording, then anything that ends up on a TV screen is going to be of video anyway. So it's meant things like I must defy my own citizenry of my country, or watch as I watch agencies desecrate it, because it's a municipal foul to even concern me with psychiatry, especially with the policeman initiating a detention state without a warrant, without my attorney present. I think a lot's going on with staff rotations so that the recognition of rights can be buried behind a rotation of different staff members, to reduce the chances of a person dealing with you who's actually familiar with what your rights truly are. Now, as to the distinction hetero/LGBT community, I want to query that, because what I do believe is that that religion is behind the distinction, and that just as discrimination exists in the Bible, so too does it run through and permeate this mixture of how these communities are segregatively defined. For one, you don't have it that all heterosexuals are religious. You don't have that all heterosexual couples intend to marry. You don't have it that all heterosexual couples that are married intend to have children. And you don't have it that, yeah, so it's an imposition in that regard, even just to concern the hetero community. Within the LGBT community, you often will have gay survivors scarred by discrimination experienced in church, but then recovering enough to say things like, but my religion is still important to me. Now I've come out, but my faith is still important to me. I respect that position for those who say that, but because I'm explaining that the stratagem of the Jesus arrest and crucifixion is the killing of a bisexual, or he wouldn't be getting so much attention. The mysteries of his heart wouldn't be getting called a true mystery right through to this day. He wouldn't have an ensemble of titles or the same title used to mock him, then to exalt him, then to mock him. There wasn't a sufficient word for his type of love, and nor is it sufficient to say a bisexual is a person who favors both, because there is more than one sexual orientation type. So it's a misnomer to divide those two communities as those two communities, and that religion is behind that religion is behind it is because the persecution is locked in. So there's a lot of people who want to say, well, yeah, so they evade. There's also fear, like stoning to death was common for homosexuals in the Bible. So then, if religious as well, in fear, it may not occur to them to consider that Jesus was a murdered bisexual. It also may not occur to consider definitions of bisexuality that are expansive beyond the gay or straight debate. And so, yeah, that to me has been largely about what albums like Black Labyrinth, Black Star, Heaven Upside Down, We Are Chaos, We Are Not Your Kind. I'm still in the perennial stages of discovering some of this content, and I need to do more 9 Inch Nails meditation, because hesitation marks. So I've got to. It's a clever way to remind you to hurry up and listen to these albums, because if hesitation marks, and you've got a copy of hesitation marks, then don't hesitate in playing it sometime soon. Thank you, mofos. Have a good day.